So, I would definitely say it's worth it. But yeah, so my review. Let's start by considering the first game and its strengths and weaknesses. Its strengths were really housed in its combat, almost exclusively, right? But it had great combat. Each vocation felt pretty good. A lot of them had overlap, though, so like you could shore up some things. On a combat side of things, you have a lot of jack-of-all-trades type characters that are masters of one, is how I would describe most of the character design in the first game. Obviously, you still have some weaknesses that the other games have, or that the characters have. For example, like sorcerers and mages have weak, you know, they're just pretty weak in general in terms of like dealing with things. But they've got range damage, they got a lot of things. Do you have like Ranger, Strider are both masters of all kind of deal. Mystic Knight a master of all. Warrior's kind of the only thing that's really held back a lot. Same thing with like Mage, but only because it doesn't have a whole lot of offensive stuff. But for the most part, you have a lot of classes that actually can solo the game very effectively with little difficulty because they're good at a lot of different things, or at least good enough at a lot of different things with their kits, and then are really good at like one thing. This game decided to not do that. This game decided specifically it would not do that, and instead of making things kind of like Jack of all trades, master of one, they were like, you're just a master of one. You get one thing that your vocation can do. You don't get two things that your vocation's good at. You don't get three things your vocation's good at. You get one thing. So Striders lost their bows and now they're thieves. Rangers lost their daggers and now they're archers. Obviously the hybrid vocations are outside of that analysis because they're designed to be hybrid, right? And I actually didn't play a hybrid vocation outside of Mystic Spearhand this go around, which I would say is still largely just melee, but you have a lot of mobility to make up for it. So it might still largely be closer to leaning directly into one thing. Wayfarer is obviously going to be different because it's designed around combining everything. But comparing Game 1 to Game 2 combat-wise, I would say that they took the concept and gameplay style of Game 1... Here, I'll move my hands to this side because it's... No, it's this side? Yeah, for you guys. You go from the concepts of Game 1 over here, and you kind of evolved it to get over here. And that evolution is, I think, really good. I think they did a good job of keeping like the core of each class. I think it led to some frustrations in gameplay design from people who are used to playing the old style because, like, for example, forward roll is gone. You can't dodge as an archer. You just get hit if you don't position. So you have to like learn to play each vocation a bit differently than you had to last time. But I think, once again, that is a good thing and not a bad. Like I said, it kept the vocations very, very similar to the first one in terms of feel, but changed how you have to focus them and obviously a little bit of the gameplay to make them work well. So it becomes, even with very similar vocation, it becomes a new vocation for you. That's brilliant as far as I'm concerned. I thought that was great. So from a combat perspective, it is really good. I think for the most part, it feeds back into the first game's power fantasy, which is what it really does well in the first game. You feel like a powerful fantasy character in the first game, whereas sometimes you kind of don't. In games, you'll feel kind of mediocre a lot of the time in other games. I will say that they balanced this game a little bit better. The beginning of the first game is devastating in terms of, if you're playing on hard, rather, it's devastating difficulty. Fighting like bandits at the beginning of the first game on hard difficulty because they just do so much damage and you take so much damage, but you do so little damage. I think they balanced that a lot better. It was a circumstance where the game got easier as it kind of progressed with a couple troughs, though. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because even as the game got easier from me getting more powerful, I should move my hand this way because the camera has everything kind of backwards. Even as we got like more powerful, the level of engagement I felt with the fights did not diminish. Like, I didn't want to skip fights because they were boring or anything like that. They maintain engagement with me the whole time through. So as far as the action side of the action RPG goes, great. Absolutely. The first game's my favorite action RPG combat. This one, I would have a hard time deciding whether I like it better or not. Because that's how close they are. I don't mean to say that I don't think they did a good job, because they did a good job. It's just different enough that it's hard for me to compare directly. It's not like taking a first-person shooter and then going to another first-person shooter and one feels better, but they're identical. It's not quite like that. There are things that are just cleaner about this game that the first game lacks, but the first game has a couple like wonkiness that really works. Would I ever go back to the first one after this? Absolutely, I'd play both of them. I don't know that I would say I would play the first one more than I would play the second one, because the second one, like I said, it's a clean evolution. There's a lot of things about the second game's combat that feels very good. The world, the open world for this game, I think is the right size. It was sizable enough for me to think that this is a big open world game, but not so big that I feel like I am going to spend too much time in it and be bored. Like the newer Assassin's Creed games, or you know, just a lot of things. The Witcher was kind of too big in my opinion. The Witcher, I've never finished the first or second Witcher. I own them, but I never finished them because they were tragically frustrating to play. It's just not fun, not good combat, not good game design in my opinion. But the third one's brilliant, but I got tired of it long before I finished. I kind of had to force myself through that one. I did not feel like I needed to force myself through the size of this game. I think the size was good. Obviously, New Game Plus replayability is fantastic. You also have so many vocations that I was not able to finish all of the vocations in one playthrough. So, like, I have another playthrough I need to do. Just period. End of statement. I didn't even touch the Wayfarer, which is a combination of all of them. I didn't touch Magic Archer this time around, which is obviously a vocation I want to try because it's a vocation I haven't seen yet. I didn't do any of the magic vocations outside of Trickster, you know? And I guess technically I did miss Spear Hand, but like, I didn't do Mage or Sorcerer. So like, I'm very curious to see how Magic feels playing it versus doing this. But like, going for the other vocations that were familiar to me, obviously, and some that weren't familiar to me, they did a really good job in design for them, which is, I would say, a tall order comparing how good the vocation design in the first game was to make the vocations fun and engaging. They did a good job. They kept them the same with minor improvements or changes to make them feel freshly engaging instead of the same vocation again. I loved it. The animations were very cool. The feel, like I said, like the actual feel of you doing things was very good. No complaints on the gameplay side. The things that the first game doesn't do very well is its writing. Its story writing, as well as just the writing for some of its characters, are pretty... they leave a lot to be desired. I would say this game did a considerably better job, which is really good, but it's also really interesting to me because the bones of the story were very similar to the first one, right? You do some early game stuff, you fight off a couple big things, you take the ox cart journey, although this time it's on foot, then you get to ride the ox cart for a bit, but you go to the capital, you know, and then you're like, ooh, we gotta get our way on the in crowd with the capitals, let's do these tasks, and you have more or less the worm hunt quests from the first game. It's fight something, investigate this other thing, do this other thing, and it's very similar in terms of what you want to do, although obviously different quests, but it's very similar. But their execution of it this time was just better than the first one. I didn't mean to hit my desk. So I feel like the way they handled the storytelling this time round was good. And then when they brought you to the end of the worm hunt quests and they have you move forward, you have an expectation of what you're going to do because you assume it's going to be similar to what the first one, with a bit of a twist because of the motivations your character has for doing these versus the first game. But the twist that you're expecting isn't what ends up happening. It's an entirely different one, which is super cool. I was super excited to be surprised by this game's storytelling, which is not... I mean, it kind of happens in the first one, but, like, for the most part, the story unfolds largely as you expect the first one to go, right? Anybody who's played the first game, if you think back to the first time you played it, if you were thinking about the story at all while you were playing the game, nothing really crazy surprising happens until the Great Wall. It just doesn't. This one had a few turns that I did not expect or anticipate, and I'm super excited about that. On top of that, the voice acting throughout was fantastic. The writing for the characters was actually pretty good. You know, it's not like we were playing Baldur's Gate 3 with the writing for the characters, but, like, we had good writing for the characters, considerably better than what's the girl's name? What's the Duchess's name in the first one? Eleanor? Much better than the writing for... I can't think of a single character who was nearly as bad as her. In this game, in the first game, her personality is literally, you had a hat on that you didn't place on your head, I'm in love with you now. And she's just crazy annoying the whole time because of that. And, like, she's just super smitten with you for no reason. And, like, you're just like, oh, okay, that's your personality, I guess? Okay, we have anything for you. Okay, whatever. And we didn't have a character who was just that, you know? This game has a lot of things to do, who knows? We might have just scratched the surface. I definitely missed a few things first time. Oh yeah, I definitely missed a few things. 100% I missed some things. Because I have, off-stream, not that I've played in a couple weeks, but off-stream, I have 2 profiles for Steam. And I was playing on that other Steam profile, and I was never catching up to this character, but I found a bunch of, like, side stuff that I didn't find the first time, and I was like, oh, okay. Nothing major, obviously, but, like, some cool stuff. Pretty cool quest lines to be had. But yeah, so, like, the storylines were fine, or were cool. I enjoyed them, the way it was written. I think the side quests were... the first game has very... The side quests are kind of tricky in the first game because they're not very clear and obvious. They have some frustrations as well as far as timing goes, but they're not very clear and obvious. This game maintained that. They didn't have very clear and obvious side quests, but I think they were handled slightly better. That it was nice. I think the best thing about this game and its storytelling, sorry, not storytelling, its quest giving, is that... assuming you found the quest, you can get pawns that have that experience, and their experience is actually useful. In the first game, they might drop, like, a little tiny hint, your pawns, if they knew something. But if you missed that hint, like, you not missed it, because you could prompt it, but, like, if you didn't know what that hint was referring to, you didn't get anywhere with the quest. Whereas this one... You're just like, I don't know, and you just tell them you don't know, and then they'll lead you to where you need to go, assuming they know it. I think that's a huge boon. I think the AI for both enemy combatants as well as your pawns is better this time. I don't know that it's actually because the AI is better, or more they just made it more aggressive, and therefore there's just less downtime between them doing dumb shit. So, because, like, there was nothing more infuriating than watching your pawns do nothing for a moment and then do something stupid. Whereas now they seem to be constantly doing something. I think on the flip side of that, because they're constantly doing something, they added a penalty to you. If you mess up, you're, like, on the ground and staggered for a while, which is frustrating, but, like, I don't think it's bad. I think it's frustrating gameplay, but I think it's designed to be that. I don't think frustrating gameplay is necessarily bad unless they have a bad way to interact with the gameplay itself, but that's not a bad way to interact with the gameplay, it's just a penalty. So I'm okay with that. You didn't do the Coral Bandits quest line either. We did both of those on this playthrough. So we did manage to do those. Or at least I think we finished it. There's possibly more quests, but we killed the Coral Bandit leader guy, so I guess there wouldn't be any more. I really like how they did the pawns in this game compared to the first game, because sometimes they just sucked in DD1. Yeah. Or were outright useless. Yeah, exactly. I think they did a good job. I will say, items in the first game. The items are really, really strong. Like, insanely strong in the first game. They kind of peeled that back. The items are significantly less powerful. They made them a little bit better in terms of use cases, I think. I feel, at least. But, like with Roborant and things like that, not decaying and stuff like that. But I would say the items in the first game are just more powerful. Both the tools as well as the curatives. But I'm okay with that. I don't want the items to be that good. I will also say that in the vein of items, the combine feature in the first game is a nightmare to use, whereas in this game it was truly nice. I actually used it a lot, whereas in the first game I basically never combine anything. Granted, now I don't really use a whole lot of items in the first game at all, because I don't generally need to, but outside of, you know, a couple things, it's, you know, I never use it. I only did combinations in the first game for the quest items if I wanted to do the notice board quests for a couple specific items. But outside of that, it was borderline useless and frustrating to use. Whereas in this game, the combination system is it's a dream in comparison. So that was a really good gameplay design, quality of life improvement. I liked the ox cart fast travel. I'm generally the person that doesn't like fast travel because it lets you just skip content. And while the ox cart kind of does, it lets you progress along a road that you've been on before without having to fight every 10 seconds. It was only on roads you'd been on before. It's literally just taking the main road. And the only thing that made me actually like the ox cart is that I still got interrupted probably 8 out of 10 times to fight something. Which is all I want. I want to get to the fight fast. So, like, it was fine. It let me progress to the quest and fight something at the same time. Brilliant. They actually do what they're set up to do. For example, if you set up to be supportive pawn healer, yeah, they actually do it in the straightforward initial attack. Yeah, I didn't really play around too much with the inclinations or the specializations for pawns either. But they seem to be pretty good in terms of like what they were. I think the only thing that I don't like about the new inclination system for pawns, though, is that the inclination you had chose what voice they could do, and I would have preferred to still be able to freely choose my voice for the pawn. Get down, Daisy. Where's your toy? I would have still liked to have chosen my inclination and its voice separately. But outside of that, I'll deal. I'm curious though, if you change your pawn's inclination, does their voice change too? I didn't try that. That was something that I didn't really care for. But yeah, the pawns were great in this time round. The voice does change. That's really annoying. That's kind of annoying. I was gonna say, because if the voice didn't change, I would consider like starting with one inclination for the voice and then changing it. But, you know, whatever. Quit hitting my desk, Daisy. You keep making it vibrate. No. But yeah, great game. Great game. I definitely think, as someone who has played, I don't know, too many hours of the first game probably, I would definitely say that this game was what I wanted out of a sequel. We had... Get off of me! Jesus. I'm like, she's like pulling on the cable and I keep like stopping her from doing it and she just keeps grabbing it again. No, where's your toy? Sheesh. You had to change your source for pawn's inclination because he was kind of second ball, so yeah, his voice changed and I hated it too because he got used to the old voice. Yeah. It looked like what I want from this game. So I did not have. There were only a few things I really wanted from a sequel. I wanted better writing and better story. Where's your toy? The other thing I wanted was the gameplay to be similar but different. Because I didn't want the same gameplay, because that sounds boring, right? I've played that game 10 years, you know? By the time this one came out, I'd played it for, what, 11? Something like that? I didn't need that. I wanted an evolution of the first game's gameplay. And they did that, but they kept the core style while doing so, which is exactly what I wanted. So even the vocations that were the same, fighter and warrior, mage, sorcerer, I didn't play mage and sorcerer, but I saw them play because I had plenty of pawns that were. They were different. They were different in good ways too, I would say. They also added some completely different things with Trickster. Trickster was wild. Mystic Spearhand was also really cool. I miss that we don't have Mystic Knight, because Mystic Knight is top 2 for me, but you know, I'm not too upset. We have Wayfarer. I think Wayfarer might scratch that itch for me well enough. But Mystic Knight is something that, you know, we didn't get, but we got Mystic Spearhand instead, which was really cool. It was like the same concept, but fast, you know? So I think they did a fantastic job. Wayfarer is very interesting, I would imagine. But yeah, I think I didn't want to set myself up for disappointment or anything like that, so I kept my list of what I wanted very slim as far as my expectations goes. And they met all of those conditions, but I also think on top of meeting those conditions, they did it very well. They executed a good final game. And I think they managed to capture the same feeling that the base game I think they managed to capture the same feeling that I had playing the base game of the first one, the first time. Because at the end of my first playthrough of the first game, I probably did New Game Plus like 4 or 5 times in a row, like back to back to back, before I did anything else in any other game. And this was truly enjoyable and fun, and I want to do it again. Now, the end game has me a little bit confused. I did not like the Everfall in the first game because traversing it's a nightmare, whereas traversing the end game here is really fun. Would I say this is my favorite game series? No. No, I would not. The main reason for that is there are only 2 games in this series, and those are 2 games that came out, what, 11, 12 years apart? It's hard to hold a lot of love in your heart for a series when it's like that. Are these 2 of my favorite games, or like 2 of my favorite games, period? Probably. They'd probably rank really high for that. Dragon's Dogma obviously is one of my absolute favorite games. But as far as like other series that I have consistently made me very pleased to play, the Dragon Age series is up there. The Dark Souls and other FromSoft games would be up there. Mass Effect, even Andromeda, I thoroughly enjoyed. But I think this deserves to be in the same breath as those 2, or those 3 game series. But it's hard for me to say that it's my favorite game series because the second installment just came out now, 11 years after the first. Do I think both of those games are good? Yes. Do I think both of those games deserve my praise and my money? Yes. But at the same time, like, it's hard to say. Like, the second game for this series has come out this year, right? And Dragon Age is probably my favorite series, and it's had 3 games already, plus like a sort of extra bonus game that was part of the first one in, oh man, what was the... Is it Awakening? Is that what it was called? I don't know. It was like a mini game. It was like a half a game. It was actually more than half a game. It was like a full-size game for a lot of games, but it was shorter than the main game, than Origins. But it's had like 3.5 installments, and it's gonna have its fourth full installment. It was supposed to be this year. I think it's next year now, called Dread Wolf. Super excited about that. So like, yeah, that'll probably be my number 1. But like, this I think deserves to still be considered in that regard. I can't think of another series that I've played more than 1 game of that I like as much as these 2 together, I would say. And some of that's because some series have been good and then fallen off, like Halo, I would say. If Halo stopped at Halo 3 and then Reach, I probably would say that that one's one of my favorite series, but because it didn't, it's not. Because I don't give a shit about it anymore. It's just, I just don't care. I have no motivation to play it after 4, and then I didn't even play Guardians, and then there's another one too. I haven't played the last 2 installments of that series. Because I don't care, you know? I think both of these games are really good, and I think if they revisit it, I would be very excited for a 3rd one as well. I was talking about Halo. But yeah, I would say this was very good. I think this was the evolution that we would have wanted for this game. Coming from someone who played the first one for, what, 11 years? I'm very happy with how this one turned out. Master Chief Collection. The Master Chief Collection, I think, is good. Actually, I don't know what's in the Master Chief Collection. The original 3 games are very good. The story arc for those 3 games is fantastic. I really like it. Halo Reach was really good as well. It's a standalone, though. ODST, I don't care about. It was fine. It was fun at the time, only because it was different in the same universe. But it's honestly, it's kind of mediocre as a game in general, in my opinion. But 4 was not interesting. And then I didn't play the other. There's like, after 4 was Guardians, I want to say, and then whatever the newest one's called, Infinite. I didn't play either of those 2. I have no idea. I have no idea. But yeah, I would say that this game was what I wanted it to be. And I think that the only thing that I want this game to have that the first game has is something like Bitter Black Isle. I want a dungeon I can grind in so that I can just keep playing the gameplay in different ways. I want a long-form dungeon like Bitter Black Isle, and I hope they give us one in the DLC. But, you know, if they don't, I think they still gave us a good game. Because fighting enemies that are notably stronger than I am when I first arrive is very satisfying. This is also the other thing, is my first game, a lot of my time I spent doing no-hit runs, right? And I did no-hit runs through Bitter Black Isle. That was my shtick. I don't know what I would do in this game that would capture that same feeling. You know what I mean? $10. That ain't bad. But yeah, I don't know what I would do in this game to capture the same feeling. Like, I could do a no-hit run of the story, maybe. I think it would be harder because it's open world and there's like things like harpies where you're just like, where are they coming from? But I think this game would be harder to no-hit than the first one, regardless. But I think, is it doable? Sure, I'm sure someone's working on it. But I wanted to do no-hit runs of like a dungeon. I want something like that, and it just doesn't exist in the game yet. So that would be what my wish list for a DLC would be, something like Bitter Black Isle. Single vocation runs are pretty satisfying. Yeah, I'm sure I'll do that over time as well. I enjoyed playing the different vocations I played. But yeah, I don't know. Bitter Black Isle was just, in my opinion, Bitter Black Isle is the best dungeon in a video game ever made. It's just, the way you traverse it is dark and scary, and it has the tension and the danger and the more or less claustrophobia when you're trying to deal with these bigger enemies. Like getting in some of the hallways where you have like an elder ogre is truly scary, right? I mean, it's a video game, so it's not like actually scaring you, like viscerally, but like you get your heart rate pumping because of that, because you're just like, there's nowhere for me to go. I have to succeed somehow. And the only purpose to be in there is to progress forward, right? So, like, Bitter Black Isle has that in a way that another dungeon that I've played just doesn't. Or in any other dungeon that I've played just doesn't, because the combat alignment between the dungeon and the game combat itself just feels so good in that circumstance. So you'll just say it's great. Yeah, I knew what you're talking about. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just the combination of the way combat works in combat design in that game works in combination with a very restricted dungeon that has an element of randomness and change to it, but also has a system where when you arrive, you can't be out-leveled for it. You can't be too strong for it, really. You can be strong enough, but you can't be too strong when you first get there. And it's just satisfying. Like, you can't... Like, let's take Elden Ring, for example. Like, in Elden Ring, before you do some of the more dangerous things, you can just get you can just level. And out-leveling stuff actually works pretty good because of the way level scaling works. Even at level 200 in the first game, if you weren't geared well, you were going to have a hard time. And then even if you were geared well, the enemies were still stronger than you. You know, they just were. You had to learn how to actually fight them. And that's something that I think is nice. There's a lot of things in this game that I was able to kill because I didn't have to quite learn how to fight them well, just well enough, because it's open world and there's a bunch of space for me. But when you're in Bitter Black Isle, you can't do that because the space available to you, the real estate of the ground is low. And so you have to just, you know, you have to figure it out. You have to figure out what the enemies are doing. You have to figure out how you need to do stuff. And that's what I like about Bitter Black. It's a combination of the way the game design is and then the way they design that dungeon that I really like. And I'm hoping they give us something similar. The place is super tight. Exactly, yeah. But yeah. I guess that's my review. It's really good. It's really good.